So just a moment of appreciation and I don't know, sympathy for those suffering from the conflicts in the Ukraine. It sounds very difficult and very scary. I think everybody's a little scared. So maybe we can send some of our good thoughts and energy towards them today. So with that in mind, so we usually talk about a koan, and so I wanted to kind of I guess the theme I'm going for today is it's really about experiencing this for ourselves. Right, of course, that's a theme, that we hear about and talk about and practice with, is experience this for yourself, see it for yourself. And so I just want to reiterate that, right? How important that is to keep in mind as a guiding principle. As simple as this practice is, right? It's very simple. The simple practice, simple teachings. And yet when we start talking about it, it gets very complex and subtle. And there's really so much to this practice and to this awakening that it does take years. It takes years of practice. And there's different kinds of awakening and different ways to express it. And so, with that in mind, it's like looking at this, huge cloud of possibilities and then starting to experience for ourselves this awakening and then this manifestation. And so do we all see the same thing, right? So it's about so we experience, right, this enlightenment. We kind of get the sense that there's just one enlightenment. And if everybody does the right thing, then we all experience the same awakening. But that's not really accurate, and it is. In reality, it's very diverse, and it's different for everybody. And so we have our experience, and our experiences, and then we try to fit it in, right? We want to see the same thing. We have faith in this. We have faith that we can see the same thing and share the same mind of the Buddha. But then reconciling that, integrating that with our experience and others' experiences is a real process and a practice. So this koan is great. I love it. It's from it's like the old school koans. It's the transmission of the light, which is the stories of the first, 50 or 100 or 28 ancestors. I don't know how many it is exactly, but the first transmissions of enlightenment, right? It's called transmission. Enlightenment awakening is transmitted from teacher to student, and student becomes a teacher, and then teacher to student, on and on, from the Buddha's awakening to ours today. And so there's this idea of the seamless passing on of this awakening, so that we today have the same awakening as the original Buddha. who we also understand was not the first, right? He was just the first to start in this lineage, but awakening is a universal and has been happening forever. So this is the third story, the third awakened one, which is the fourth. So it's the third patriarch. So it went from Buddha, Gautama Buddha, to Ananda, to Mahakashapa, and then to Ananda, and then to Shanavasa. So this is Shanavasa's awakening story, the story of enlightenment, and tells the story of his life a bit. And man, seriously, we like to think that we're kind of like, I don't know, I like to think that as a tradition, as a spiritual tradition, we are rational and like not, I don't know, it's not a fairy tale, right? We kind of see this as like, this is real stuff. And yet we have these stories of these sometimes amazing and, I don't know, incredible figures. So Shanavasa, the third patriarch, and I'll get into what's the amazing, some incredible parts of this story. But just to open up with the case, the third patriarch was Shanavasa. He asked Ananda, what kind of thing is the original unborn nature of all things? Ananda pointed to a corner of Shanavasa's robe. Again, he asked, what kind of thing is the original nature of the Buddha's awakening? Ananda then grasped a corner of Shanavasa's robe and pulled it. At that time, Shanavasa was greatly awakened. So that's his awakening story. That's his enlightenment story. Basically getting his robe tugged a little bit. And so how does that work? Well, right, that's the koan. What is awakening about having the corner of your cloth tugged or your robe? Well, I think this goes to the heart of experiencing this for yourself. Ananda could have explained to him the answer. He could have tried to rationalize and give a rational answer about what this means. What's the underlying, basically what I see is he's asking, what's the foundation of all awakening? The original nature, the absolute, right? What is the absolute truth of all things? And so this, like many other koans, right? It comes back to experiencing this for yourself, not experiencing that for yourself, and not experiencing what happened yesterday for yourself, but experiencing what is happening right now in this very moment. And so we need reminders. Be here now. This is the absolute. This experience, my relative experience, is the absolute nature of all awakening. And so if we can learn to integrate this, the absolute and the relative, my relative life, my differences, the difference in my awakening, the difference in how I see things, the difference in my story. How can this be the same story as the Buddha? Okay, so now for this really cool part of his story. So he was like, the way they talk about him, he's this very special person, right? It says, he was born after being carried in the womb for 6 years. Wow, can you imagine that? And then the world honored one, the original Buddha, had predicted. He said, this grove is called Urumanda, and 100 years after my death, there will be a monk named Shanavasa, and he will turn the wheel of the wondrous Dharma here. And then the master was born here after 100 years. You know, so very auspicious, and I don't know, this, it's like the, it's foretold very, in a very mystical way. Later, he received the Venerable Ananda's transmission and stayed here at this grove. He turned the wheel of the Dharma and vanquished a fire dragon. Did anybody know we had a dragon slayer in our lineage? Well, apparently we do. Right, and they mentioned that part like it's no big deal, right? If I was writing it, I'd be like, wait, what? What happened there? Let's talk about that. That's the coolest thing. That's the coolest part. But no, it's like, oh, whatever, no big deal. He just vanquished a fire dragon. But let's move on to the next thing. The dragon submitted to him and presented him with the grove. So the dragon gave him this grove. Okay, and it was all in accordance with the world honored one's prediction. So anyway, the point I'm making here is that, you know, this sort of fantastic mystical story is all fine and good, but it has nothing to do with the awakening. Right? We can be from anywhere and have any story, the most amazing, incredible story, magical, wondrous. It says he was a wizard. Venerable Shanavasa was originally a wizard who lived in the Himalaya mountains. So, right, it can be amazing and special, and yet there's nothing special about this. It's just, who cares relative to the awakening that we all can experience from anywhere, anytime. So anyway, even with this magical, amazing life story, he still needed to experience just this for himself, right? That's the awakening, is realizing that just being right here, right now, is the point. The point of no point. Okay, so it goes on to say that the practice of Zen must be one's own practice of enlightenment. When you are enlightened, you should meet a person who is a true teacher and clarify that you must not practice Zen aimlessly and spend your life in vain. Who among the ancients was not a body born of a mother and father, who did not have feelings of love and affection or thoughts of fame and fortune? However, once they practice Zen, they practice thoroughly, achieving enlightenment. From India to Japan, throughout the different times of the true Dharma, counterfeit Dharma, and collapsed Dharma, enough holy and wise men and women to overthrow the mountains and oceans have realized the result of enlightenment. Thus, you monks who possess sight and hearing are no different from the ancients. Wherever you go, it can be said that you are this complete person, and you are Kashyapa and Ananda. Okay. So that's Shanavasa. And so coming back to, experiencing this for ourselves, right? That's what's so important here, is that we experience this, just this, the integration of just this, and the foundation of all awakenings, the absolute, is this relative experience. So to experience this for yourself, it means to be open to teachings, right? It means to ask for teachings, to ask questions. And then it means to ask again, right? If a teacher says something that makes perfect sense to me, that's great, it's wonderful, but I should ask somebody else as well. If a teacher says something that doesn't make sense to me, I should say, okay, great, fine. And then I should ask somebody else, right? We keep asking, we talk to people, talk to others. If something doesn't sound right, then talk to somebody else. We should never be encouraged to not ask other teachers and other people the validity of what we hear. Whether it feels right on or not. That's one way for us to experience this for ourselves, is to keep asking, keep the mind open. I wanted to also share two other ways of experience this for ourselves. And for these, I want us to actually experience this now, right? I'm going to talk you through a quick activity or practice. And the first is counting the breath. And so, I've counted my breath. That's been a main practice of mine since the very beginning, since day one. It was the first practice I learned. And there's many years where I have not practiced counting the breath and then come back to it. And it's what I recommend as one of the most powerful ways to develop presence. And settle the energy. So if we can settle our energy down into our center, then it kind of frees up space in the mind. To not be so distracted, right? To not be worrying so much about the past and the future. We can settle our energy. So anyway, counting the breath is a way to bring the breath here, to bring it here. And yet, even within this practice, there's a lot of subtlety, and there can be a variety of experiences with it. And so for me, like one thing, I sat this last session, part of the weekend, the full weekend, and then part of the week. And it was a renewing of myself for the power of this practice and the subtleties that I have missed before. And so, for example, one thing I recognize is that often when I'm counting my breath, it's like I'm being present, right? I'm trying to be present, but what that really means is I'm sort of visualizing the count, right? Being in front of me. It's like coming down in front of me. So I count 1, 2, 3. And it's sort of like with my breath, I'm still projecting a little bit. It's kind of like in my space, but it's still just a little bit in front of me. And so I started practicing with being the breath, being the count, being the number. And that shifted things for me. It helped me to experience this for myself as myself, as it is myself. So there's experiencing it for myself, and there's experiencing it as myself. And those are subtle. It's a subtle difference energetically in space. And so I just wanted to share this with you all as a subtle practice that may help make a difference for you or not. But so anyway, here we go, right? I want us to practice. Let's see, we're just going to count our breaths to 5, right? It took me 4 years of sitting to be able to count past 5. I counted to 4 and then just got lost in, whatever, right? My drama. And then I'm spinning a story, right? And then after 20 minutes, I come back to, I'm at 4, and I can count 5. Anyway, 1 through 4. So let's go with 1 through 5 today. And so I want you all to count with me. And I want you to feel, first of all, the first experience that I talked about, or it could be your own experience, right? So we're just going to kind of do it as we normally do it for the first try. And then we're going to shift and try to do it with this suggestion for the second try. So for the first try, we're just going to count our breaths basically how we normally do. And if you have never counted your breath before, then this is a good invitation to try this. All right, so I'm going to count out loud, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, good job, everybody. Okay, so for this one, I want you to practice counting the breath by being the number. It's like, I am number 1. I feel it in my body. I'm vibrating with the number 1. I am the number 2, and I feel it in my body. I am the number 3. Okay, so we're going to practice that, right? So we're kind of shifting wherever our mind was, wherever our body's energy was, in body, out of body, we're bringing it back to the body. Now we're in our body and we're being the number, right? So it's not, I'm not counting the number, I'm being the number. I am number 1. I am number 2. Okay, so with that in mind, now we're going to count to 5 again. Okay, being the number. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So the experiment is over. And I'll be interested to hear from you after the talk during questions about what the difference was for you, if you could notice a difference. Again, it can be very subtle. I've been sitting for, I don't know, 20, 25 years now, and I just now kind of practice that for myself. It's taken me many, many years, decades of practice to shift from the numbers being right here in front of me, very close to me, to being me. And it was different. It was different for me. And it helped. So anyway, that's the first experience I wanted to share. And then the second is about non-doing. There's another experience that I've had, recently and during sesshin, where I realized most of my practice has been about doing something. including counting the breath, right? For my first 10 years, I was trying and struggling to count my breath. I was really doing it. I was trying to do it, and I was trying to do it right. And then Koan practice. I spent many years in Koan, sitting with Koans, trying to be the Koan, right? But I'm still trying to do that. I'm trying to do it, and I'm trying to let go, and I'm trying to see something. That's different than not trying. We could be trying to, anyway, right? I don't want to go into all the subtleties, but whatever we're trying to do, I want you to practice with that. And so we're going to sit with 5 breaths where we are, and this time I'm not going to count it out loud. I don't want it to be distracting, but we're just going to sit. I'll count the breaths inside my head, and then I'll stop us after I'm done counting that. But we're going to practice with just sitting, right? Sitting like we normally sit. Okay, whether it's with koans, whether it's with counting the breath, whether it's with I don't know, sending love, whether it's listening to the environment, another great practice. So whatever we're practicing with and you're practicing with, we're just going to do that for 5 breaths. Okay, starting now. All right. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to practice with non-doing, and it's kind of a mantra, right? It's like Dogen says in the Fukin Zazengi, right? Think of non-thinking. How do you think of non-thinking? You think non-thinking, and that thinking is non-thinking. It's a little paradoxical, but anyway. So for this, it's non-doing. So let's sit with non-doing. So every time we breathe in or out, we're going to think to ourselves, non-doing. I am non-doing, which is a little different than not doing, right? These subtleties. There's not doing and non-doing. Anyway, I'm recommending non-doing for now. So sitting with non-doing for 5 breaths. Okay, go. All right. Okay, stop. Stop non-doing. Okay, so those are right. These are the experiences that I wanted to share with you. You know, as examples of subtle practice and experiencing it for ourselves. And so, you know, ultimately, I think the koan, what Shanavasa's story, right? It's like, what's the greatest, most amazing thing? It's like, well, it's right here. So being here now and experiencing this for yourself is the most important today. So that's it. Now I'd like to open it up for questions and comments and